Guest characters, guest characters, guest characters. If you're like me, a person who slams chairs at mages out of passion, then you'll definitely have experienced some of these figures in fighting games before, but the popular ones really only represent the tip of the iceberg. The topic of guest characters has been covered extensively by other creators, but aside from my video about Infamous's Cole McGrath in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I've never focused on this talking point too deeply on the channel. In an attempt to rectify this grave misdemeanor, there are multiple fighters we'll be covering today, and the more they make us say, wait, how did they make it in, the better. The obvious ones are Ronaldo in City of the Wolves, Negan in Tekken 7, and Rash in Killer Instinct, just to name a few, so to spice things up a bit, I won't be including them in this video. Now, I can't guarantee that my selections will be anything you haven't heard of before, what with the tsunami of guest fighter videos available on YouTube, but I've done my best to put the Carnage spin on the subject matter to keep you entertained. You know, things like mispronouncing Japanese words and Killer 7 references. Okay, now that we're primed and ready, make sure to grab a snack and bear witness to some of the most absurd fighting game guest characters. Ever since its second installment released way back in 2002, Soulcalibur has been home to many guest fighters that represent various franchises. The Legend of Zelda, The Witcher, and even Assassin's Creed have all left their mark on Namco's iconic weapons-based series, but Soulcalibur 4 is where it went a bit loopy. Traveling from a universe far, far away, Darth Vader and Yoda joined the roster in the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions respectively, and I'm sure we all know how annoying this guy was to fight against, but they're not what we're here to talk about. Interestingly, there's a third Star Wars rep available on both consoles, and his name is Starkiller.
Well, his official name is the Apprentice, but Starkiller is way cooler, so I'll stick with that.
Anyway, Starkiller is the protagonist of the Force Unleashed duology, with both games chronicling his story arc of being Darth Vader's secret apprentice. I did some research and found that his name comes from George Lucas's original name for Luke Skywalker, Luke Starkiller. Yeah, edgy. I don't believe he's canon to the overall Star Wars mythos, but that didn't stop him from slashing his way into fighting games. Believe it or not, but Soulcalibur 4 marks his first appearance, as it predates the launch of the first Force Unleashed title by 2 months. This means he technically isn't a true guest character, but that's not a position I care to argue, so let's move on to his gameplay. As a disclaimer, I am far from a Soulcalibur expert, so please remember this as we go forward. The very first of Starkiller's properties I noticed was his range, as it isn't hard to frustrate the enemy with pokes from mid-screen. Darkside Fang, Vortex Saber, and the first hit of Mist Splitter come to mind in situations like this, and if you've conditioned the enemy to avoid ducking, you can combo into Celestial Hammer with ease. Conversely, Side Saber is a knockdown tool that hits mid, meaning there's some semblance of 50-50 mix-ups in Starkiller's neutral. If you're feeling ballsy, you can even throw out Star Divide, and holding up will allow Starkiller to pursue the enemy into the air at the cost of some Soul Gauge. On the topic of Soul Gauge, it can be used to pull the enemy towards you, start grounded combos, shoot out a projectile that hits low, and perform an unblockable series of lightning strikes. To say that Starkiller has unique ways to interact with meter would be an understatement, but with how it's often used for satisfying combo enders, running out of meter can really screw you over. Optimal meter management is what separates the newbies from the experienced Soulcalibur gigachads, as you have to know when to spend and when to refrain. Aside from meter, I also noticed that some of Starkiller's useful tools have considerable startup. I wouldn't go as far as to say that he's a slow character, but there's no doubt in my mind that anybody who actually knows how to play properly will be able to react to his Hell Sweep and 8-way strikes. However, this doesn't apply to all of his attacks, as there are plenty of opportunities for quick pokes. Starkiller has more than enough moves to crush the enemy's defense from a variety of ranges, but he can't always do this quickly. I can imagine players having to mentally juggle frame data, meter management, stage positioning, etc. all at once, leading to Starkiller not being the easiest character to utilize. On top of all this, his optimal combos and resets demand well-rising attacks, unorthodox attack angles, and specific spacing, adding even more complexity to his game plan. Perhaps my favourite quality of Starkiller is that he gives you exactly what you put in. If you play him casually, there's plenty of fun to be had performing flashy special moves, but mastering his intricacies is like playing a whole new character. Out of curiosity, I did some looking on the 8-way run website and found some old Soulcalibur 4 tier lists. We can see that Starkiller was considered to be mid-tier, but that didn't stop him from making it to Grand Finals at CEO 2011. It's awesome to see Starkiller make it this far at a major, and if you have access to the game, I suggest trying him out for yourself. Moving on to wacky Capcom territory now, Street Fighter Cross Tekken is home to many a guest fighter, and I'm sure we all remember just how depressing bad box art Mega Man's beer belly is. However, we can get even stranger, and this brings me to Toro and Kuro. These lovable little critters are from Doko Demo Issyo, a Japanese exclusive PlayStation series with some of the best box art I've ever seen. This all sounds great, but it begs the question, how did they make it into a fighting game? I mean, they're cats, and it's not like combat plays a large role in their original source material, so how could they go up against someone like Hugo? Well, they were first announced at Tokyo Game Show 2011, and I believe their inclusion stems from Capcom and Sony teaming up for some absurd marketing. Doko Demo Issyo hadn't jumped over to the West at that point, so I assume that most of us English speakers were scratching our heads at their insertion. Both characters are absent from the Xbox 360 and PC versions, although the latter can be modified to feature them again. With this in mind, there's all sorts of gameplay shenanigans they can bring to the table, and as Street Fighter Cross Tekken is a team game, it makes perfect sense to pair Toro and Kuro up, right? Well, not really. Toro is a reskinned Ryu, and Kuro is a reskinned Kazuya, so they don't possess many standout properties outside of their height. At a first glance, it's normal to assume that many attacks would fly over them, but this sadly isn't the case. Hell, they'll even levitate when attacked to ensure that they properly take damage, and when combined with their shockingly low health, it's not very hard to take them out. In case this wasn't bad enough, their stubby arms lead to major range issues. Good luck trying to play neutral with Toro and Kuro, as even the simplest of hit confirms and whiff punishes will often drop. You have to be right up close for these to be consistent, but neither character has solid pressure tools to keep the enemy in check. On the bright side, their forward and back dashes are quite speedy, allowing them to approach and retreat when necessary, but their walk speed is abysmal. If they try to jump in, any anti-air can send them to the vet in an instant. Normal and special moves aren't great either, as while they're lifted directly from Ryu and Kazuya, they don't hit as hard and have horrible reach. Performing the same combo with the cats and their owners will always lead to reduced damage, which is the cherry on top of the low-tier sundae. Both characters have standing overheads, but I can't picture a universe where these would ever connect, especially Kuro's. This is supposed to be Kazuya's right splits kick, but the range has been sliced into pieces. Toro's collarbone breaker travels nowhere, meaning both cats have no reliable high-low mix-ups. As both characters have terrible damage, attack reach, health, support value, etc., they should be viewed as the game's joke characters, but I think that was kind of the point. Like, look at them. They're clearly supposed to be funny and whimsical, not serious. They come from a series of games that exemplify bizarre Japanese humor, so their appearance in Street Fighter Cross Tekken feels like a side mission they went on in between games. Additionally, I believe the marketing components of their inclusion was a success, as this is how I discovered Toro and Kuro as a kid. It's safe to say that Doku Demo Isio had limited, if any, mark on the Western games industry before Cross Tekken, and I find it no coincidence that some of the series' later games released worldwide in the 2010s. Unfortunately, Toro and Kuro's console exclusivity led to them being tournament banned, but I don't think anyone would have picked them unless they just wanted to troll. As Dan Hibiki isn't in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I think Toro and Kuro are great substitutes if you embrace the jank and don't expect anything strong. Plus, seeing a 3-foot cat throw out electrics will never get old. In all my years of playing every weirdo PS2 era game I could find, Ready to Rumble was one series that never popped up on my radar. I was more interested in the period stranger games like Mr. Mosquito and Katamari Damacy, so a typical looking boxing game was something that never really interested me. Until now. Unlike most fighting game guest characters that are taken from other video games, Ready to Rumble Round 2 features real-world celebrities as part of its roster, and these aren't no-names who are looking for a quick paycheck. Rather, the likes of Shaquille O'Neal, Hillary and Bill Clinton, and Michael Jackson are ready to throw down. I understand MJ being here since he had ties to the video game industry throughout the 90s, but the other guests? Yeah, I'm not sure. Bill and Hillary Clinton were the President and First Lady respectively in 2000, and I would love to know how the development studio pitched the idea to the White House. All of this seems too insane to be true, but as reality is often stranger than fiction, we can now beat up the former president with the King of Pop. For those looking to quickly jump in and play as their favorite guest character, it's unfortunately not that simple, as you have to finish arcade mode 10 times to unlock them all. After spending passionate hours accomplishing this goal, I found that they're more enjoyable than I thought they would be. Like, way more enjoyable. Ready to Rumble lets you throw out blows at different angles, as well as block and weave out of harm's way, all while never being too complicated. Performing combos and counterattacks is as easy as pie, making it great for new players to jump in, so it feels more like an arcade-style game rather than a real sports simulation. With how the title is designed to appeal to casual audiences, none of the guest fighters feel that different to the original characters in terms of gameplay. As far as I can tell, they all have the same general strategies and attack properties, so there's not much of a difference between the 7'1" Shaquille O'Neal and Hillary Clinton. For those looking for a more serious battle system, this might be a letdown, but at this point you'd probably be better off playing Fight Night. Each guest can make use of the rumble mechanic by activating their install with 6 letters, and even this is universal. The number of levels you have influences how powerful your combos will be, and when filled all the way, Shaq can one-hit KO any opponent. If Ready to Rumble were a more competitive experience, I would label all this as a negative, but I can't in good conscience attempt to critically examine this. It's intentionally wacky, absurd, and whatever synonym for crazy you can think of. Honestly, I didn't even know how to explain any of this madness when I was first writing the script, but I did come to one conclusion. The developers must have had the time of their lives while making this game. I can imagine that they went out for drinks and pitched the idea of Michael Jackson fighting the president as a joke, but by some miracle, their legal team did a fantastic job at making it real. As the gameplay is focused on quick bursts of excitement over long-term strategy, some would argue that Ready to Rumble is style over substance, but when the style is this entertaining, how can I complain? Not only does Bill Clinton look like the average middle-aged Australian father, but he can do battle with his wife, an A-list basketballer, or arguably the most famous musician in human history. Even after documenting all of this for the video, I'm still in shock and disbelief that Ready to Rumble exists. What could easily have been a bargain bin sports title that no one remembers going forward is now etched into the halls of guest fighter history. Ready to Rumble Round 2 is, without a doubt, the craziest sports game I have ever played in my life, but as I'm all about these types of games, I mean that as a big compliment. Believe me, I almost died laughing when I saw Bill Clinton's win pose for the first time.
I hope you have a good healthcare plan.
With some of the more wacky characters out of the way, let's now go back to a more serious guest fighter. Continuing from its predecessor's exclusivity to the original Xbox, Dead or Alive 4 found its home on the Xbox 360, and with it came an unusual crossover. If you finish story mode with every character, you'll notice that someone resembling Master Chief from Halo is now playable. Well, it's actually Spartan 458, or Nicole to give her real name. The original plan was for Team Ninja and Bungie to collaborate and have the Chief himself be playable, but Bungie disapproved of this idea for storyline reasons. Not wanting to drop the deal entirely, the studio created a new character and stage specifically for Dead or Alive, using concepts they had created for Halo 2 as a base. As Halo is primarily a first-person shooter, it may seem impossible to accurately represent the series through the lens of a 3D fighting game, but as many of her attack strings reference the original source material, fans will have a lot to cherish. Anyway, Nicole is all about getting up close and personal for big damage, with some attacks being borrowed from Leon and Bass. Speaking of Bass, I noticed that Nicole is taller than him, making her one of the largest fighters in DOA history. This makes sense considering she's a Spartan, and it complements her devastating strikes. Whether you want shoulder tackles, long-range kicks, or even plasma grenades, Nicole can seemingly do it all. Her move list is quite simple too, coming in at only 56 attacks, which is lower than many other fighters. When you filter out the situational types of moves that won't be used very often, it leads to Nicole being great for players who dislike memorizing hundreds of individual strikes. In fact, I'm pretty sure that she's very strong at all skill levels, as some old tier lists on the Free Step Dodge website place her in S tier. I'd like to mention that in high-level competitive play, a lack of stances, backturn strikes, and general complexities can lead to predictability, and I wouldn't be surprised if the player base quickly caught on to her animations. As I'm not familiar with the specific details regarding her frame data and punishment, I can't provide a thoughtful opinion on these qualities of her character, but what I can say is that her combo game is nuts. One attack I feel is quite strong is her spinning foot sweep. This is a low that knocks down when close, leading to a full string. When spaced all the way, it slightly staggers the opponent, but you can even use down forward punch from a distance to catch them ducking for a 50-50. Brute Basher is a slow yet powerful combo starter that launches after a critical hit, doubling its use as a combo tool. The linear trajectory means it can be sidestepped however, so be very careful. Mac Lunge and SPNKR Lunge can initiate combos, with Ghost Destroyer being my favorite combo extender. It keeps them close, which is great for pressure, and if you land it after Brute Basher, it becomes a ground bounce. From what I can tell, Nicole doesn't have to choose between damage or Oki in her combos, as she can easily get both with the right string. If the enemy catches on and begins to expertly defend, don't worry, because there are plenty of throws for you to use. We have grabs with great Oki, grabs that force them away, grabs that start combos, grabs that lead to extensions, and grabs that can catch crouching opponents, just to name a few. By now, it's clear that Nicole has 1,000,001 ways to dismantle the enemy's defense, but she requires players to refrain from being too aggressive. Getting punished for repeated strikes is DOA 101, and with how her combo starters tend to have noticeable startup, they'll lose to faster strikes. Also, useful tools in her arsenal will whiff when spaced, leading to opponents who are familiar with the matchup knowing which types of attacks you'll utilize at this range. It may seem like a good idea to use Spartan Spin Kick as a long-range poke, but it can be ducked or countered. I never played Halo that much growing up, which is ironic because I was always an Xbox kid, but I enjoyed Nicole way more than I thought I would going in. Her simple yet effective fighting style reminds me of Jason in Mortal Kombat X or Hagar in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so if you're a fan of big brutes, I suggest you give her a go, she's a lot of fun. If you've ever played an old arcade game developed by Sega and thought, wow, this game is pretty fun, then there's a high chance it was developed by AM2, a legendary division of Sega responsible for pumping out hit after hit. 1996's Fighters Megamix was one such title, and with its blend of fighting Vipers and Virtua Fighter, it provides a unique gameplay experience, one that's made even wilder with its many guest characters. Pepsi Man and the Hornet car from Daytona USA immediately spring to mind, but I feel like getting more obscure. For some reason that I assume involves lethal amounts of alcohol and sleep deprivation, the AM2 logo is playable. Yes, that's right, their cool logo with the stylized palm tree is a playable character. Some poor soul within Sega had to rig, model, and animate a tree for goodness sake. To make matters worse, you have to play Fighters Megamix for 84 hours to unlock the character, and even then it's not even on the select screen. You have to select Kuma-chan with the Z button to make it appear. For this much work, I expect this piece of flora to knock my socks off. What I find most interesting about AM2, aside from it being a sentient plant, is that it has no arms or legs, so it has to rely on shoving attacks. I have no clue how the opponent is supposed to react to and defend against any of these animations, but I guess that's part of being a palm tree. Much to my surprise, AM2 has strong range on some of its normals, as well as invincibility for when it wants to knock the enemy down. Many of its regular jabs have extensions that convert into full strings, which is great for catching opponents off guard. These can go on forever, and their ambiguity is great for conditioning the enemy to block. Once they do, now's your chance to grab them. Front-facing, back-facing, and even crouching throws are all present and accounted for in AM2's command list, so he even has a complete throw game. Some grabs even have different outcomes depending on your proximity to the wall when initiating them. This applies to his strings too, as for example, if you input punch 3 times, the final hit will take the form of a grab if you've got the enemy cornered. A flaw of AM2 I happen to notice is that many of its movement tools and larger attacks have noticeable recovery. They appear as though they would recover quickly, but you really have to wait for the tree to return to neutral before you can input your next attack. This means that AM2 is often left vulnerable when whiffing a linear strike, so I would suggest staying at mid-range to give yourself some distance. If they whiff an attack from here, AM2 has plenty of punishment tools, with this being one of his key strengths. I can't begin to describe how many of these wacky moves are legitimately useful for starting pressure and punishment, especially when you start using lows. These also have fantastic range, leading to the opponent having to guess which direction to defend. With how Fighters Megamix was exclusive to the Sega Saturn and never made its way over to the arcades, resources about competitive play are borderline impossible to find, and I'm not convinced that the game even had a competitive following in the first place. As the Fighting Vipers characters are some of the strongest in the game, you would never see the AM2 palm tree in serious matches anyway, but I wonder how experienced players view the tree's viability. In my view, the recovery frames and mediocre walk speed somewhat hold AM2 back, but it can make up for that with range and pressure. I guarantee that if you play Fighters Megamix casually with a friend, they'll have no idea what to do if you start laying into them with palm tree nonsense. Only the most knowledgeable of gardeners will know how to tame the tree's rage, and I would say that it's my favorite fighter in the whole game. I can't get over the fact that Sega made a palm tree into an enjoyable fighting game character. As the final offering on the chopping block, let's head back over to Capcom's Bizarro World and analyze one of their lesser-known spin-offs, Onimusha Blade Warriors. With a historical Japanese setting and some truly insane combat sequences, the Onimusha series has earned its fair share of fans, so it's no surprise that Capcom decided to cash in and make it into a platform fighter. With its mix of PlayStation All-Stars like meter gain and lane switching that feels straight out of Fatal Fury, Blade Warriors is a fun, if flawed title, and it has something really weird up its sleeve. Like with any spin-off, many recognizable characters from the main games are playable here. We have Samanosuke, Kaede, Jubei, Mega Man, Zero, what? For reasons that I assume relate to promotional marketing, everyone's favorite robots have leapt into the Onimusha universe, and they're better fits than you would think, at least in terms of battle mechanics. To my untrained hands, Blade Warriors doesn't seem too complex as it feels very pick up and play, much like Ready to Rumble was. It's the type of game you would play casually, allowing Mega Man fans to initiate their favorite moves with ease. Combos, projectiles, and anti-airs are all performed with one button, with items being thrown into the mix to complement the pre-existing insanity. Unlike Toro and Kuro, who are just reskins of pre-existing fighters, Mega Man and Zero are their own fighters, so we'll cover them in order. Mega Man's basic combo is a 4-hitting string of sword swipes. It does solid damage, but it's actually not a true combo, meaning opponents can block in between the hits. You can use the universally unblockable kick to breach their defense though. Charging and releasing the attack button leads to a knockback strike, and holding forward during the charge turns the move into a projectile. I see this as being a crucial part of Mega Man's toolkit, as despite the obvious startup, it lets him do battle from long range. Up and attack is a 2-hitting DP that will primarily be used for anti-airs, but it has a lot of recovery. Outside of the first hit being grounded, there's nothing special about this attack though. That's about it for Mega Man's unique strikes, as his finisher and sweep are universal, with his projectile out of ready stance being shared by Zero and Magoichi. All in all, Mega Man is a perfectly serviceable character. He's got all the tools you could want in a platform fighter, yet nothing about him really stuck out to me. I mean, it's pretty funny seeing a humanoid robot in ancient Japan, but his playstyle isn't different enough to warrant further exploration. Switching over to Zero, and unfortunately not much is different. His 4-hit combo has a delay before the final strike, making it easy for opponents to defend against, but outside of this, it's pretty much the exact same as Mega Man's. In fact, his projectiles, finisher, and sweep are also the same. I'm getting some serious deja vu here. The only major difference I noticed involves Zero's DP, and I love this attack. It only hits once, but sends him flying forwards diagonally with massive reach, making it an amazing punishment tool. Another difference involves his charge strike, as it hits twice and keeps the enemy close upon knockdown. If you're a fan of Okizeme, then you'll definitely want to make liberal use of this move, as it can turn the tide of battle, especially when fully charged. Initially, there aren't many substantial differences between Mega Man and Zero, but if you were to level them up in Blade Warrior Story Mode, they can take on different forms. Ground-style Mega Man has access to a force field and a new dash attack, whereas Bug-style Mega Man can alter his charge attacks. Proto Zero is identical but does more damage overall, and Ultimate Zero, even with his powerful name, only has a stronger laser beam. That's a real letdown for poor Zero, but at least Mega Man got some cool new stuff, I guess? After having grinded out Blade Warriors matches to get footage, I realized that it's the type of game where the system mechanics overly dictate how matches play out, so every character starts to feel samey over time. With how futuristic Mega Man and Zero's arsenals are, it's a shame they don't stand out more, but hey, I'm just glad there's a game where Zero isn't a busted top tier. Now that our journey into guest character land has ended, I hope you've learnt more about these fighters. They're all completely different in every observable avenue, but their shared fun factor is what ties them all together, and I had a blast with each and every one of them. From tiny cats throwing fireballs to Halo Spartans kicking teenagers off a mountain, it was impossible to know what was coming next, and I feel that this perfectly describes the core concept of what a guest character is supposed to be. Their whole point is to surprise the audience by providing never-before-seen styles into a pre-existing franchise. Having to authentically replicate the tone of an outside work in your own creation sounds like an interesting challenge from a development standpoint, and as the players we get to see some awesome results. While not everyone is a fan of guest characters, the fact remains that when done right, they can attract new audiences to a specific game or even the genre as a whole. Whether they fit in perfectly or are the weirdest thing you've ever seen, guest fighters are part of what makes fighting games so special, and it wouldn't be the same without them. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.